Eric Schmidt.
Hi. Welcome. Move this over here. Maybe we can avoid some of the glare. How's it going? It is Sunday. A little bit later than we normally start. I'm sorry. We have a few things to work out in terms of when we're going to be doing our scheduled streams for at least for the rest of the month. Because from now until the 30th at least, I'll be working. Majority of my shifts will be from 1:30 to 7:30 p.m. Central Time. So I'm going to have to put up a poll or something in the Discord about whether it would be more beneficial for everyone if I streamed maybe 2 hours before my shift. So that would probably be a 10 to 12 stream, just to give me enough time. And then would it be better if it were I would say like an 8 to 10 at night central stream, but I would probably start a little bit late, so maybe closer to 8:30, just because of the 15-minute drive back. You know, I'd probably need to get some dinner and take care of myself, that kind of stuff. So that'll be something that we'll discuss together later. Whether if people have opinions that they want to type out now, or if you want, you can join the Discord and make that known. Whatever works. But for now, I'll just be thankful that y'all are here and you're ready to listen to some nice, calm, soothing rain. I'll probably mute the music when we start the reading, and hopefully the music isn't too loud for the voice or vice versa. But we are on book 17 of Homer's The Iliad, and we're going to try to read at least two books, 2 chapters. Maybe we'll go for 3, depending on the length of each one. And before we start, hi Malik. How are you? Thank you for the walk-on. Alright. So let's go ahead. And we will slowly lower this down. It's just the rain and us now. And get all warm and cozy. Okay. Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. Book 17. The fight over Patroclus's body. Menelaus kills Euphorbus. Menelaus, son of Atreus, dear to Ares, was no sooner aware of Patroclus's loss to the Trojans than he thrust his way to the front, and pushing past the warriors clad in bright bronze, straddled the dead man as a heifer stands lowing plaintively over its firstborn calf. There red-haired Menelaus stood grasping his handy round shield and his spear, ready to kill any man who tried to seize the corpse. Then Euphorbus, who had watched peerless Patroclus die, approached with his ash spear and called to Menelaus, beloved of Ares, "Zeus-nurtured son of Atreus, leader of armies, withdraw. Forget this corpse and its blood-stained armor. I was the first among these Trojans and their allies to strike Patroclus with my spear in the thick of the fighting. Now grant me my fair fame among the Trojans, or I'll hurl this weapon at you and rob you of that life that seems sweet as honey." Red-haired Menelaus, deeply angered, replied, "Father Zeus, how vile! Such arrogance as this! Leopards, lions, vicious wild boars, the bravest of the brave among creatures, show less effrontery than these sons of Panthos with their ash spears. Yet Hyperenor, the horse-tamer, had small profit from his youth when he jeered at me and my attack, calling me the most contemptible of Danans. He failed to make it home on his own 2 feet, I think, to bring joy to his dear wife and noble parents. Stand and face me, and I'll do for you as well. Better be off, though, and hide among the ranks, rather than do so and come to harm. Even a fool knows trouble when it comes." But Euphorbus was undeterred by this, and answered, "Menelaus, ward of Zeus, you will pay the price now for my brother's death, you boaster, you who made a widow of a new bride, and brought my parents untold pain and grief. Surely it will console them in their sorrow if I take your head and armor and place them in Panthos's and Lady Phrontis' hands. The issue must not remain unresolved, whether our duel ends in flight or victory." So saying, he struck Menelaus on his firm round shield, but its stout defense resisted, deflecting the sharp point. Then Menelaus charged at him spear in hand, with a plea to Father Zeus, and as Euphorbus drew back, stabbed him at the base of the throat, with all his weight behind the blow, thrusting in his strength. Right through the tender neck the spear blade passed, and Euphorbus fell with a thud, his armor clanging round him. His hair that was fine as the graces, the locks braided with gold and silver thread, was drenched in blood. Like a mighty gust of wind in some lonely place that uproots a fine olive sapling, a tall, upstanding one that its planter set in a moist hollow, that quivered in every breeze and burst into white blossom, and lays it low on the ground. So did Menelaus, the son of Atreus, kill Panthos' son Euphorbus, he of the strong ash spear, and stripped him of his armor. Now none of the Trojans dared to tackle glorious Menelaus. He was like a mountain lion that, trusting in its strength, seizes the fattest heifer from the grazing herd, grasping her neck first in his mighty jaws and cracking the bones, then devouring the blood and entrails in a fury, while the herdsmen and their dogs keep their distance, shouting loudly, but so filled with fear they dare not charge him. And the son of Atreus would have carried away Euphorbus' fine armor if Phoebus Apollo had not grudged it, and stirred up Hector against him, that peer of swift-footed Ares. Disguised as Mentis, chief of the Cicones, he uttered winged words to the Trojan leader. "Hector, why chase after warlike Achilles' horses? A vain prize indeed, and not for you, since of mortal men only Achilles, whose mother is a goddess, can master them and drive them, while fierce Menelaus straddles Patroclus' corpse, and has killed Euphorbus, best of the Trojans, and put an end to all his brave deeds." Menelaus elicits Ajax's help. With that the god returned to the toils of battle, while Hector's mind was clouded with the deep darkness of grief. But glancing along the lines, he quickly saw Euphorbus' corpse on the ground in a pool of blood, and Menelaus stripping him of his glorious armor. Giving a great cry, he ran through the front ranks of warriors, his bronze armor gleaming like the unquenchable fires of Hephaestus. And Menelaus heard his shout, and consulted his proud heart anxiously. "Alas, if I abandon Patroclus and this noble armor, he who died fighting for recompense for me, I fear the contempt of every Greek who sees it. But if out of shame I fight Hector of the gleaming helm, and all his host of Trojans alone, they may well surround and overpower me. Yet why debate the point? When a warrior decides to fight with a man whom the gods exalt, to fight against their will, he straightway brings great sorrow on himself. So none of the Greeks will fault me for giving ground to Hector who fights with the gods' aid. Still, if I can find Ajax of the loud war cry, we too might turn and fight alongside one another, even against the will of the gods, hoping to save the corpse of poor Achilles, son of Peleus. Of many evils, that would prove the least." While he was still reflecting, the Trojans advanced, Hector at their head. Menelaus gradually retreated, abandoning the corpse, turning about continually like a bearded lion driven from a sheepfold by the dogs, and by men shouting and brandishing their spears, so his hot courage chills, and unwillingly he leaves the farm. Red-haired Menelaus left Patroclus lying there, but when he reached the ranks of his friends, he turned and sought out great Telamonian Ajax. He found him on the left flank, rousing his comrades and urging them to fight, for Phoebus Apollo had filled them with dread. Menelaus ran across, and reaching him, cried, "Ajax, dear friend, come with me. We must race to defend the corpse of Patroclus, and bring his poor dead naked body at least to Achilles. Now Hector of the gleaming helm has the armor." His words stirred warlike Ajax to action, and he and red-haired Menelaus ran through the front ranks of warriors. Hector was still there. Having stripped Patroclus of the glorious armor, he was dragging the corpse off to sever the head from the shoulders with a sharp blade, and feed the rest to the dogs of Troy. But when Ajax arrived, bearing his tower-like shield, Hector stepped back into the ranks of his friends, and mounting his chariot, gave the fine armor to his men to bear off to the city, and bring him glory. Then Ajax covered Patroclus' body with his great shield, and straddled him like a lion with cubs that huntsman meets in the woods shepherding its young, that exults in its power and masks its eyes, wrinkling its forehead. So Ajax stood, and with him, close by, Menelaus, beloved of Ares, nursing his great grief in his heart. Hector dons Achilles' armor. Meanwhile Glaucus, Hippolochus' son, leader of the Lycians, anger in his face, was berating Hector. "You look the part, but in battle you failed to act it. Hector, your fame is hollow, since you play the woman. See if you can save your city and your homeland by yourselves, you Trojans. We Lycians will not fight the Greeks for Troy, where no one thanks an ally for his endless efforts in his war. Since you left Sarpedon, your friend and guest, as Argive prey and spoil, why indeed should you try to save one of lower rank? Sarpedon alive was often an asset to your army and yourself, but you lacked the courage even to drive the dogs from his corpse once he was dead. So now, if these Lycians are mine, home we go, and that spells ruin for Troy. Think if the Trojans were only filled with the courage without limit that men possess, who toil and sweat in battle for their country, then we might drag Patroclus' corpse back to Ilium. Were we to snatch his body from the field and take it to Priam's great city, the Greeks would exchange it for Sarpedon's body clad in its precious armor. For Achilles is the best of the Greeks beside the ships, he and his men who fight in close combat, and this squire who has fallen was his. Yet you even lack courage to stand against mighty Ajax, his battle cry ringing in your ears. You daren't look him in the eye, since he's the better man. Hector of the gleaming helm answered angrily, "Is that you, Glaucus? Why so arrogant? I thought your wisdom was greatest of all in dark-soiled Lycia. Well, I reject your claim that I won't face mighty Ajax. I've no fear of a fight, or the sound of chariots, but the will of Aegis-bearing Zeus is all-powerful. He sends even a brave man reeling, and robs him of victory as easily as he sets him on. Come, my friend, and stand by my side, and watch me in action. Then tell me whether this day I play the coward, as you say, or whether I put an end to many a Greek eager for fame, who tries to defend the corpse of Patroclus." With this, he shouted aloud to the warriors, "Trojans, Lycians, and you Dardanians, who like close combat, be men, my friends, and think of glorious war, while I don peerless Achilles' armor, that fine battle gear I stripped from mighty Patroclus, whom I slew." Then Hector of the gleaming helm ran swiftly over the field into the near distance, to reach his men who were bearing Achilles' bright armor to the city. There he halted, out of the bitter fight, and changed his armor. His own he handed to his warlike Trojans, for them to take to sacred Ilium, and donned the imperishable armor of Achilles, that the gods of Olympus had given his father Peleus, and he in turn, now he was old, had given to his son, though the son would never wear it in old age. The Greeks and Trojans engage. Now when Zeus the cloud-gatherer from afar saw Hector donning godlike Achilles' armor, he shook his head and murmured, "Unhappy man, cladding your body with the imperishable battle gear of a mighty warrior before whom all others quail. Blind you are to the death that inexorably nears you. You it is that killed his great and generous companion, and irreverently stripped him of that prize. Yet, yes, I will grant you power enough for now, but you must pay. There will be no homecoming for you, nor will Andromache receive Achilles' glorious armor from your hands." And the son of Cronos nodded his head with its dark eyebrows while subtly molding the armor to Hector's body. Now the spirit of Ares, the war god, dread Aeneas, entered him, filling him with courage and strengthening his limbs, and Hector, uttering his loud war cry, rejoined the ranks of his glorious allies, and showed himself to all in the glittering armor of brave Peleus' son. He spoke to each general, inspiring him to battle, to Mesthles, Glaucus, Medon, Thersilochus, Asteropus, this is a nightmare, Deisenor, Hippothos, Porcius, Chromius, and Ennomus, the augur, rousing them to fight with his eloquence. "Listen, you vast host of neighbors and allies. I summoned you from your cities, not because I lacked numbers, or needed them, but because you were keen to defend the women and children of Troy from the fierce Achaeans, and to that purpose I spend my people's wealth and gifts for you, and provisions, to maintain your strength and courage. So let every man attack the enemy, to live or die, that is the task of war. I will share half the spoils with whichever of you drives Ajax off, and drags Patroclus' corpse into the ranks of us horse-taming Trojans, and I'll share the glory with him too." At this, with spears extended, they charged full tilt at the Danaans with high hopes, in their folly, of dragging the corpse away from Telamonian Ajax. Many a man he would kill beside the pile of dead, but now he spoke to Menelaus of the loud war cry. Zeus-nurtured Menelaus, my friend, I've lost hope that the two of us single-handed can win free from this fight. Patroclus, who is dead, whose flesh may shortly glut the dogs and carrion birds of Troy, has less to fear than you and I, the living, faced with danger, for the fog of war shrouds Hector and cloaks our doom. Call now to the Greek generals, if there are any to hear. Menelaus responded with a piercing cry, calling out to the Danaans. Friends, generals, leaders of the Argives, you who drink freely at the Atreides table and command the army, honored by Zeus with glory, I cannot see you in the heat of battle, to name you one by one, but never mind the names now. Charge together, your hearts filled with fury lest Patroclus' corpse become a plaything for the dogs of Troy. Excuse me. Ajax the Lesser, son of Oileus, heard him clear, and was the first to reach him, running towards him through the lines, and after him Idomeneus and Meriones his companion, peer of Ares the man-killer. As for the rest, who could name from memory all those who rallied to the Achaean cause? Ajax drives back the Trojans. Now Hector led the packed ranks of Trojans in attack. The roar they made was like that of some mighty wave breaking against the current at the mouth of a rain-fed river, setting the headlands echoing at the gateway to the crashing sea. But the Greeks stood firm over Patroclus' corpse, united, walled about with their bronze shields. And Zeus wove a veil of dense mist round their bright helms, having lacked no love for Patroclus while he lived and was Achilles' comrade, fearing now lest he become a plaything for the dogs of Troy. So Zeus inspired Patroclus' friends to defend his body. At first the Trojans pushed the bright-eyed Achaeans back, and they relinquished the body. Eager though the bold men of Troy were with their spears, they failed to kill a single Argive, though they did begin to haul the body away. Yet the Greek retreat was only momentary, for Ajax rallied them, he who was finest in looks and action of all the Danaans except for peerless Achilles. He charged through the front line with the power of a wild boar that scatters the dogs and agile young huntsmen when he turns on them in some mountain glade. So glorious Ajax, son of great Telamon, broke the knot of Trojans gathered round Patroclus' corpse, ready to win glory for their cause and drag it to the city. Hippothous, the noble son of Pelasgian Lethos, it was who had bound a strap round the ankle tendons and delighted Hector and the rest by dragging the corpse off feet first through the action. Now evil came on him swiftly, that no one can avoid despite all their efforts. For Telamonian Ajax charged at him through the throng, and once at close quarters struck at Hippothous' helm with its bronze cheek pieces and horsehair crest. The point of the great spear in his massive hand split it wide open, and blood and brains from the wound spurted up the blade to its socket. Then Hippothous' strength was gone, the strap fell from his hands, and he toppled forward onto the corpse of brave Patroclus. Far from fertile Larissa he died, brief was his span of life. Felled by the spear of noble Ajax, he brought his dear parents little joy for all the pains of his rearing. Oof. Now Hector replied, hurling his gleaming spear at Ajax, who kept a careful eye on it, and dodged it by a hair's breadth. It hit Shadius, the brave son of Iphitus, a powerful prince, best of the Phocians. He lived in a famous city, Panopeus. The spear struck beneath the center of his collarbone, the bronze point passing through and exiting at the base of his shoulder. He fell with a thud, and the armor clanged around him. Ajax in turn struck Phorcys, the warlike son of Phaenops, hitting him in the belly as he bestrode Hippothous, shattering the plate of his corslet, the blade letting out his bowels, so he fell in the dust clutching at the earth. At that the Trojan front and even Hector gave ground, and the Greeks shouting loudly dragged away the bodies of Phorcys and Hippothous, and stripped the armor from their shoulders. Damn. I agree. This streamer's so unbearable. Just popping in for a moment, back to work. Thanks for stopping by to say hi, Mike. And hello to you too, Rebecca. Aeneas counterattacks. Losing heart, the vanquished Trojans would have been forced back to Ilium by the warlike Greeks, who, through their strength and effort, would have won greater glory than Zeus intended, if Apollo, disguised as the herald Periphas, son of Epetus, who had grown old in Anchises' palace, and was kindly disposed towards his son, had not roused that self-same Aeneas. So masked, Apollo, son of Zeus, addressed him. Not even lofty Ilium is safe, Aeneas, if the gods are against you. Though I have seen men still trust in their own strength and efforts, courage and numbers, and hold their own despite the will of Zeus. Yet now when Zeus desires our victory, not the Greeks, you and your Trojans, filled with fear, will not fight. At his words Aeneas looked him in the face, and knew him for Apollo, the far striker. He called aloud, Hector, and all you other leaders, Trojans and allies, what shame this is to lose heart, and be driven back defeated to Ilium by these warrior Greeks. Yet a god, who stood but now at my side, tells me that Zeus, the supreme counselor, will aid us in this fight. So let us take the Danaans head on, and make it hard for them if they try to carry Patroclus' corpse back to the ships. So saying, he took up position out in front of the foremost warriors, who rallied and turned to face the Greeks. Then Aeneas wounded Leocritus, a son of Arisbus, and Lycomedes' noble friend, thrusting at him with his spear. Lycomedes, beloved of Ares, was saddened by his fall, and running in close with a cast of his gleaming spear, caught a general, Apicion, Hippasus' son, in the liver under the midriff, bringing him to his knees. Apicion something, came from fertile Paeonia. I hate these. Its best warrior after Astropaeus, who in sympathy ran forward keen to fight. But the Greeks prevented close contact, walled in by their shields, as they encircled Patroclus' corpse with outstretched spears. For Ajax, ranging to and fro, urged them not to give an inch, nor make a foray to outdo their comrades, but stand firm round the corpse in close order. So they fought, and the earth was drenched in dark blood, the Trojans and their allies falling like flies, and the Greeks too were bloodied, though fewer of them were killed, remembering, packed together, to defend one another from random strikes. So the fires of battle raged, and that part of the field where the leaders stood round Menoetius' dead son was cloaked in darkness, as if the light of sun or moon was lost. Yet the rest of the Trojans and the bronze-greaved Greeks fought in the clear light of day, lit by the piercing glare of the sun, with never a cloud over plain or mountain. They fought intermittently, avoiding each other's deadly shafts, keeping at a distance, but the leaders there, in the center, caught in the fog of war, suffered attrition from the merciless bronze blades. Only two of the Greek generals, the noted warriors Thrasmedes and Antilochus, were unaware that peerless Patroclus was dead, thinking he was still among the living, and fighting the Trojans where the lines converged. So they fought further off, wherever their men were dying or in panic, as Nestor had told them so to act when he sent them out from the black ships to do battle. Automedon dismounts to fight. All day long the intense conflict raged, and in the grim struggle sweat streamed over the eyes and hands, the knees and shins and feet of the warriors contending over the corpse of fleet-footed Achilles' noble squire. They tugged the body to and fro in that narrow space, like men pulling at a great bull's hide steeped in fat that a tanner gives them to stretch. They stand in a circle and all haul hard, so its moisture is expelled while the fat sinks in. Both sides never lost hope. The Trojans of dragging the corpse to Troy, the Greeks of bearing it to the hollow ships, while over it raged the fiercest of fights, savage enough to satisfy even Ares, stirrer of armies, or Athena, in their most wrathful moods. Such was the net of toil and grief that Zeus drew taut about men and horses over the corpse of Patroclus. Excuse me. Now as yet noble Achilles knew nothing of Patroclus' death, for the fighting was under the walls of Troy, far from the swift ships. Not for a moment did he think his friend would be killed, expecting him to return alive from the gate, nor did he dream that Patroclus might try to take the city itself without him, nor did he himself expect to sack it. The fact that he would not do so was a prophetic statement of his mother's, that she communicated to him privately, bringing him news of Zeus's intentions, though she told him nothing now of this latest tragedy, that the dearest of his friends was dead, and that round the corpse the warriors, grasping their sharp spears, fought and killed each other without cease. There some bronze-clad Achaean would say to the rest, "Friends, if we retreat to the hollow ships and yield this body to the horse-taming Trojans, who will drag it to their city and gain the glory? That would be small fame indeed for us. Better the black earth swallow us instantly where we stand." While some brave Trojan would call out in turn, "Friends, let no man retreat, even if we are fated to die beside this corpse." So they encouraged others and fought on, the clash of metal rising through the restless air to the bronze-colored sky. Now, far from the battle, Achilles' immortal horses wept, as they had from the moment they first learned that their charioteer lay in the dust, slain by man-killing Hector. Though Automedon, brave son of Diores, tried gentle words and flicks of his pliant whip, and even threats, the pair refused to return to the ships by the wide Hellespont, or enter the battle beside the Greeks. Harnessed to the ornate chariot, they stood as still as pillars, planted over the tombs of the dead, their heads bowed to the earth. The hot tears poured from their eyes to the dust, as they wept for their charioteer, streaking their long manes that streamed from under the yoke on either side. And Zeus saw their grief and pitied them, and shaking his head murmured, "Unhappy pair! Why did we give you, ageless and immortal, to that mortal king Peleus? Did we mean you to sorrow with these wretched men? For what is there more miserable than man among all the things that move and breathe on earth? Yet Hector shall not mount your ornate car. That I will not grant Priam's son. It is enough he wears the armor and boasts of it. I will fill your legs with vigor, your hearts with strength, so you may carry Automedon out of battle, back to the hollow ships, for I intend glory to the Trojans, to kill and kill till they reach those same bent ships, and the sun in setting brings the sacred dark." So saying, he breathed new strength into the pair, and shaking the dust from their manes, they drew the swift chariot lightly among Trojans and Greeks. And behind them Automedon stood, grieving for his comrade, the chariot darting in and out like a vulture scattering geese, fleeing from the Trojan lines again as swiftly as he charged them, unsettling them in the noise of battle. Yet he could not kill them, though he chased them down, unable alone in the racing chariot, both to aim his spear and control the sacred horses. But at last a comrade, Alcimedon, son of Laerces, son of Haemon, saw him and ran behind the chariot, shouting, "Automedon, what god has robbed you of your senses and filled your mind with foolish thoughts, that you fight alone at the front? Patroclus is dead. Hector wears Achilles' armor now and glories in it." "Alcimedon," Automedon, son of Diores, answered, "which of us Greeks was ever equal to restraining and guiding the power of this immortal team, except while he lived Patroclus, peer of the gods in wisdom? Yet since death and fate have overcome him, take the whip and the gleaming reins, while I dismount and fight." Automedon kills Eretus. All right. At his words, Alcimedon mounted the swift war chariot and grasped the reins and whip, while Automedon leapt to the ground. Great Hector saw them and promptly called to Aeneas, "Counselor of the bronze-clad Trojans, Achilles' chariot and team are here, I see, with a pair of vulnerable charioteers. We could capture them if you agreed. These men could never hope to fight us both, and nor will they." Anchises' mighty son readily joined him, and the two attacked, their shields of dried and toughened oxhide clad with bronze on their shoulders. Chromius and godlike Aratus gave support, and the Trojans, in their folly, had high hopes of killing the Greeks and driving off the spirited horses. But Trojan blood it was that would be shed before they had finished with Automedon. Excuse me. He prayed to Father Zeus, and his heart was filled to its depths with strength and courage. He turned to Alcimedon, to his loyal friend. "Keep the chariots close, Alcimedon. Let me feel the horse's breath at my back. Hector, son of Priam, will not stop, I think, till he kills us both, mounts behind Achilles' long-maned team, and scatters the Argive ranks, though perhaps he himself may yet be killed as he leads." So saying, he shouted to Menelaus and the Iantes. "Leaders of the Argives, the Trojan champions, Hector and Aeneas are closing in on us. So leave the corpse to the bravest of your men, and defend and help us the living fend off its fierce attack. War's bitter sorrow, and the day of doom. All is in the hands of the gods still. As I throw this spear, let Zeus decide its fate." So saying, he aimed his long-shadowed spear, and hurling it, struck Aratus on his round shield, which proved a poor defense, the spear piercing the bronze, and driving clean through the belt into the lower belly. Aratus leapt and fell backwards, as an ox leaps and falls when a strong farmer with a sharp axe strikes behind the horns, cutting the sinews, and the keen spear quivered in his entrails as he died. Then Hector cast his gleaming spear at Automedon, who, keeping a careful eye on the missile, dodged it by bending forward. The long javelin fixed itself, butt end quivering, in the ground behind him, till mighty Ares quelled the motion. Now, in their fury, they would have fought hand to hand with swords, if the Iantes had not come between them, answering the call of their comrade. In fear of their attack, Hector, Aeneas, and godlike Chromius retreated, leaving Aratus where he fell. Then Automedon, peer of swift Ares, stripped him of his armor and rejoiced, saying, "It consoles my heart somewhat for Patroclus, though only a little, for this is a lesser man." With this, he piled the blood-stained armor on the chariot and climbed in himself, his limbs still red with gore, like a lion that has eaten a bull. Athena and Apollo enter the battle. Once more the net of fierce battle, filled with pain and tears, was stretched taut over Patroclus' corpse. Athena, descending from Olympus, stirred the quarrel for far-echoing Zeus had sent her down to urge on the Greeks, according to his fresh intent. As Zeus displays a rainbow shimmering in a darkened sky as a sign of war, or a portent to mortals of some coming storm that chills the earth, halts laborers in the fields, and troubles the flocks, so Athena wrapped herself in a gleaming mist, entered the Danaan ranks, and roused the troops. Disguising herself as Phoenix in form, and imitating his tireless speech, she first spoke to great Menelaus, who was nearest. "Surely you will be shamed, Menelaus, and taken to task, if noble Achilles' faithful comrade is torn apart by the running dogs beneath the walls of Troy. Hold your ground, then, and rouse your men." "Phoenix, venerable lord, my ancient friend," answered Menelaus of the loud war cry. "If only Athena might grant me strength and defend me from this hail of missiles, I'd stand over Patroclus and protect his corpse, grieved at heart by his death as I am. But Hector's fury burns like mortal fire, and Zeus grants him glory as he lays about him with his spear." Bright-eyed Athena was filled with joy at his words, since he had named her before the other immortals. She strengthened his knees and shoulders, and gave him the persistent daring of a fly that finds human blood so sweet it keeps attacking however often it is flicked away. With such courage she filled his heart's depths, and straddling Patroclus he hurled his gleaming spear. It struck Podes, Aetion's son, a wealthy Trojan nobleman, a friend of Hector and his favorite companion at the feast. Red-haired Menelaus hurled his spear and struck him on the belt as he turned to run, the bronze blade passing through him. He fell with a crash, and Menelaus dragged the corpse away from the Trojans into the Greek lines. Now Apollo the far-striker, disguised as Phaenops, Asius' son, Hector's dearest foreign guest, from Abydos, addressed him as his friend. "Hector, who of the Greeks will not fill you with fear if you run from Menelaus, who was never much of a fighter, even if he does snatch the dead from our ranks single-handed before vanishing? Now he's killed your faithful comrade, a sound fighter in the front line. I mean Potus, son of Aetion." A black shroud of grief enfolded Hector at these words, and he ran to the front, clad in his gleaming bronze. As he did so, Zeus veiled Ida in cloud, and taking up its glittering tasseled aegis and shaking it, with many a flash of lightning and peal of thunder, drove the Greeks in rout and granted power to the Trojans. Ajax prays to Zeus. The first to die in the rout was Peneleos, a Boeotian. As he faced the enemy, he was struck a glancing blow on the top of the shoulder that sliced through to the bone. Polydamas had hurled the spear from short range. Then Hector, fighting hand to hand, wounded Leitus, son of brave Electrion, in the wrist and put him out of action. He retreated, unable to grasp his spear or fight on. As Hector pursued him, Idomeneus struck Hector on the breastplate beside the nipple, but the long spear shaft broke at the socket, and the Trojans shouted in relief. Hector then cast in turn at Idomeneus, son of Deucalion, aboard his chariot, missing him by a hair's breadth, but striking Coranus, the charioteer, and squire to Meriones, whom he had followed from the city of Lyctus. Idomeneus had come out from the curved ships on foot, and would have fallen to the Trojans if Coranus had not brought Meriones and the chariot past at a gallop. Though a light of salvation to Idomeneus, fending off from him the day of death, he himself was thus fated to die at the hands of men killing Hector. The spear struck under his jaw below the ear, shattering the teeth at their roots and slicing through his tongue. The reins fell from his hands, and he toppled from the chariot, but Meriones gathered the reins and turned to Idomeneus. "Use the whip and head for the fleet. You know yourself the power is no longer with us." And Idomeneus, hearing him, lashed the long-maned horses, and, drained of courage, drove for the hollow ships. Great-hearted Ajax and Menelaus too had realized Zeus was turning the tide of battle, empowering the Trojans. Telamonian Ajax called out, "Look, any fool can see that Father Zeus is helping them. Their spears strike home. Zeus guides them, regardless of the warrior's skill, while ours fall short. Well, we must devise for ourselves how to retrieve the body and delight our dear friends by returning safely. They look on anxiously and speak their fear that the black ships will fall into the hands of this invincible man-killer Hector. If only we had a messenger to send to Achilles, who has not yet heard, I guess, that his beloved friend is dead. But there's none to be seen. Men and horses are shrouded in this fog. Father Zeus, save the sons of Achaea from the dark, and clear the heavens so our eyes can see. Kill us if you will, but in the light." Zeus had pity on his sorrowful prayer, and swiftly drove away the mist and darkness, so the whole battlefield lay clear in the sun. Then Ajax turned to Menelaus with a loud war cry. "Look out, Menelaus, nurtured by Zeus. See if Antilochus, brave son of Nestor, is still alive, and ask him to run and tell warlike Achilles that his dear friend is dead." Menelaus sends Antilochus to Achilles. Menelaus of the loud war cry agreed to his request, but left Patroclus' body unwillingly, fearing it might fall to the enemy as a prize if the Achaeans fled. He was like a lion, weary of provoking the dogs and men that defend the pick of a herd, as they watch by night, which attacks in its hunger without success, met by blazing torches and a hail of missiles hurled by bold hands. Quailing before them, despite its eagerness, it slinks away sullenly at dawn. Menelaus, as he left, laid his responsibility on the others. "Meriones, you and the Iantes, leader of the Argives, remember Patroclus and his kindness. He was always a gentleman in life, yet now death and fate have claimed him." With this, red-haired Menelaus departed, glancing keenly round like an eagle that is said to have the sharpest sight of all birds, and spots the swift hare in the undergrowth from high in the sky, swooping down to seize it and rob it of its life. So your sharp eyes, Menelaus, ranged through the ranks in hopes of finding Antilochus alive. He soon saw him on the left flank, encouraging the men and urging them on. Closing on him, red-haired Menelaus called out, "Antilochus, nurtured by Zeus, come listen to an evil thing I would never have had happen. You must surely see how the gods are bringing us to ruin, and how power lies with the Trojans. Now Patroclus, best of the Achaeans, is dead, and every Danaan must miss him sorely. So run swiftly to the ships and tell Achilles, and hope he will hasten to retrieve the corpse and bring it quickly to his hut, the naked corpse, since Hector of the gleaming helm has the armor." Antilochus, horrified at his words, was speechless for a while, his eyes wet, his voice stifled. Yet nonetheless he responded to Menelaus by handing his armor to his peerless friend Laodocus, who was wheeling the horses to and fro behind him. Then, in tears, set off for the ships at a run to carry the dreadful news to Achilles. Menelaus decided not to stay and support Antilochus's men, hard-pressed though they were, and much as they would miss their leader. He sent noble Thrasymedes to them instead, while he ran back to his post beside the dead Patroclus, and reaching the Iantes reported, "I have sent our men to swift-footed Achilles, but despite his hatred of Hector, I doubt he'll take to the field without fresh armor. We must act without him, remove the corpse, and ourselves escape dark death at the hands of these noisy Trojans." Great Telamonian Ajax replied, "You are right, peerless Menelaus. Do you and Meriones lift the corpse quickly and carry it from the field in your arms. Leave us to hold Hector and the Trojans. One in courage as we are one in name, we are used to standing our ground side by side in the heat of battle." Patroclus' corpse is carried from the field. Menelaus and Meriones lifted Patroclus' body in their arms, and with a powerful effort raised him high in the air, while the Trojans, seeing the Achaeans' action, gave a great cry, and charged towards them as hounds in the hunt, running before a pack of youths rush at a wild boar, eager to drag him down to destruction, but giving ground and scattering widely in flight, when he wheels among them, trusting in his strength. So the Trojans came on at first, groups of them thrusting with swords and double-edged spears, but drained of color when the Iantes turned on them, scared to attack and fight for the body. Meanwhile, the two warriors hurried the corpse from the field and back to the hollow ships, as the fierce conflict raged like a fire that sweeps suddenly through a city, setting the houses on fire so they crumble in the intense glow, while a strong wind drives it onward roaring. After them as they went rose the endless din of chariots and spearmen, but they struggled forward with the corpse, like mules on a rough mountain track that exert all their strength to drag a log, to be used for a beam perhaps or a ship's timber, hearts pounding as they heave wearily, soaked in sweat. And behind them the Iantes held their ground, as a wooded ridge holds back the overflow of rivers, turning the powerful streams back over the plain, preventing the fierce flood breaking through. Yet though the Iantes stalled them, the Trojans were relentless, led by Aeneas and glorious Hector. And as a flock of jackdaws or starlings fly, shrieking in alarm when they see a death-dealing falcon swoops towards them, so the Achaean youths gave up the fight and fled before the pair, with frantic cries. Many a fine piece of weaponry was lost at the trench, and on either side as the Danaans fled though the war continued unabated. And that is the end of Book 17. Tori, I appreciate the 50 bits. Stop it. We will read Book 18 after I take a bit of a break. My voice is already getting a little hoarse, which is why I was having trouble doing the Ajax and Menelaus voice. And since we started late today, I don't think I'm going to go for a third book unless this next one is actually very short. So, I'll let you know in a bit. I had some extra and I had to do something with them. You could save them. But I appreciate it. So at this point, we'll go to a BRB. I'll take 15, and I'll come back at 6:02 my time. Okay. I'll see you in a bit. Hello, welcome back. We are now on book 18. I did a whole bunch of relaxing, but I didn't look into the size of the chapters. So book 17, which we just read, got us to page 314. So it was a 20-page chapter, 20-page book. And then for book 18, it'll be 15 pages. So about 35 pages today. So that's 15. How much will the next one be? That's the main thing. So I doubt we're going to get through a third book today, but we will. The next one is only 10 pages. So we're going to go for 3 books today. Turn your books to page 394. Welcome, Jackal. Since we've got a 15-page book and a 10-page book coming up, chapter, whatever you want to call them, we're going to read through both of those. So, yeah. Because it's possible to finish this book within the next 2 streams. So we're going to try that. All right. Book 18. Thetis responds to Achilles' sorrow. Oh, I forgot. I don't want to distract too much. So the fighting raged, while swift-footed Antilochus brought the news to Achilles. He found him in front of the high-stern ships, agonizing over the war, communing anxiously with his proud heart. What woe is this? Why are the long-haired Greeks in flight? Why are they being driven back once more from the plain to the ships? Is this another sorrow sent by the gods, one that my mother prophesied? Did she not say that while I still lived, the best of the Myrmidons would forego the light of day at Trojan hands? Is Patroclus dead in his rashness, despite my warning to return to the ships once the fire was out, and not to battle Hector? Hello, Toastman. He was lost like this in reflection when Antilochus, bathed in scalding tears, brought the bitter news. Alas, warlike son of Peleus, sad are the tidings you must hear. Would it were not so, but Patroclus is fallen, and they fight over his corpse, his naked corpse, for Hector of the gleaming helm has your armor. At these words a black cloud of grief shrouded Achilles. Grasping handfuls of dark sand and ash, he poured them over his head and handsome face, soiling his scented tunic. Then he flung himself in the dust, and lying there outstretched, a fallen giant, tore and fouled his hair. The slave girls he and Patroclus had seized as prizes shrieked with alarm and ran to warlike Achilles, beating their breasts and sinking to the ground beside him. Antilochus, weeping and groaning, grasped Achilles' hand, fearing he might take his knife and cut his own throat, so heartfelt was his noble grief. Such a dreadful groan did Achilles give voice to that his divine mother Thetis heard him, deep beneath the sea where she sat beside her ancient father. She cried out, and all the divinities, the Nereids of the depths, gathered to her. Glauca, Thalia, and Simodoce were there. Nisaea, Speo, Thoe, and ox-eyed Hale, Simothoe, Actae, and Limnoria, Melite, Iara, Amphitho, and Agave, Doto, Proto, Pherusa, and Dynamene, Dexamine, Amphinomene, and Calinera, Doris, Panope, and far-famed Galatea, Nemertes, Apsudis, and Calianassa, Clymene, Ionera, and Ionassa, Mera, Orethia, long-haired Amathia, and all the daughters of the deep. Yeah. Read as Kermit the Frog, Cobra. The Cobra, the plan is to read it normally on stream for the Sundays. I can refund. I think. Or I owe you one. Yeah, it's typically, I need to just turn them off for Sundays. But here. Oh no, here, Cobra. Since I can edit these. Such a dreadfully groan did Achilles give voice to that his divine mother Thetis heard him. Deep beneath the sea where she sat beside her ancient father. Yeah! She cried out, and all the divinities, the Nereids of the depths, gathered to her. Glauce, Thalia, and Simodoce were there. Nessia, Speo, Thoe, and ox-hide Hale, Simothoe, Acte, and Limnoria, Melite, Eara, Amphithoe, and Agave, Doto, Proto, Pharusa, and Dynamine. Alright, calm down. Dexamine, Amphinome, and Calianara, Doris, Panope, and far-famed Galatia, Nemertes, Apsudus, and Calianassa, Clymene, Ionera, and Ionassa, Mera, Orithia, long-haired Amathia, and all the daughters of the deep. It's not easy being green. I don't know how to keep a Kermit voice going. Gonna have to talk to MK about that one. When my doc asks what medications I'm on. Yeah, basically. The bright sea cave was filled with nymphs, beating their breasts, and Thetis led the lament. Sisters, listen all, so you may hear and know the sadness in my heart. How wretched I am, who to my sorrow bore the best of men. I brought a mighty and peerless son into this world, greatest of warriors. I nursed him like a shoot in a fertile orchard, and like a sapling swiftly he grew. I sent him to Ilium with the beaked ships to fight the Trojans, but I shall never welcome him home once more to the house of Peleus. And even now, while he lives and knows the light of day, he suffers, beyond my help, though I go to him. And go I will, to see my dear child again, and hear what grief has come to one who refrains from battle. So saying, she left the cave with the weeping nymphs. They parted the waves till they came to the fertile land of Troy. One after another they trod the shore, where the Myrmidon ships were beached in lines around swift Achilles. His divine mother reached his side while he lay groaning there, and with a piercing cry took his head in her hands, and spoke to him in winged words of sympathy. My child, why these tears? What sadness overcomes you? Speak, don't hide it from me. Surely Zeus has fulfilled what you prayed for. Now the whole Achaean army crouch at their ships' sterns, suffering cruelly and in sore need of you. Thetis promises Achilles fresh armor. Swift-footed Achilles sighed deeply. Mother, it is true that Zeus has brought all this about, but what is that to me now? Patroclus, my dear friend, is dead, he whom I honored more than all, honored as my own self. I have lost him, and Hector, who killed him, has stripped him of my armor, the fine, the great, the wondrous armor the gods gave Peleus as a glorious wedding gift that day you wed your mortal spouse. How I wished you had stayed among the immortal sea nymphs, and Peleus had taken a human bride. Now you too will know the immeasurable grief of losing a son, of never again welcoming him home alive, for my heart compels me not to linger among men once Hector is dead at the point of my spear, and has paid the price for despoiling Patroclus. And Thetis, weeping, replied, My child, your own death will swiftly be upon you if Hector dies, for your own doom must inexorably follow. Then swift-footed Achilles answered passionately, Let it follow instantly, since I could not save my friend from death.
He needed my help to stave off ruin, and now far from his own land has he fallen. May discord be banished from among gods and men, all that enrages a man despite his wisdom, that insidious anger that rises in the breast like smoke, sweeter to it than trickling honey. For I shall now not return home, and I have failed to protect Patroclus and all those others whom noble Hector killed, idling here by my ships, a useless burden on the earth, I, who am without peer in warfare among the bronze-clad Greeks, however superior the rest may be in counsel. Agamemnon, king of men, stirred just such a rage in my heart. But all is past and done, despite the pain, and we must curb the wrath in our hearts. So I will go now and find Hector, the man who killed my dearest friend, and accept death whenever Zeus and the other gods decide that I must die. Not even great Heracles escaped his doom, dear as he was to Zeus, the son of Cronos. Hera's dread anger fated to overcome him. I too, if a like fate has been spun for me, will lie quiet when I am dead. But for now let me win fame and glory too, and make many a deep-breasted Trojan woman moan without cease, wiping the tears from her tender cheeks with both her hands, to teach her how long I have been absent from the war. Though you love me, don't try to keep me from battle. I will never be persuaded.
What you say is right, my son, silver-footed Thetis replied.
It is right to save your hard-pressed friends from utter ruin. But the Trojans have your lovely armor, your shining bronze. Hector of the gleaming helm wears it and exults. Though not for long, I lay, since his own death is upon him. So refrain from battle, until you see me here again. I will return tomorrow with the sun, and bring you glorious armor from Lord Hephaestus. With that she turned to speak to her sister Nereids. I don't know. Plunge beneath the broad surface of the deep, and go to our father's house, to the old man of the sea. Tell him everything, while I go to lofty Olympus, to Hephaestus, the master craftsman, hoping that he will deign to give my son fresh shining armor. At this they dived beneath the waves, while she, Thetis, the silver-footed goddess, set out for Olympus to win glorious armor for her beloved son.
Ooh, Lord Olympus. Oh. Which is gross, but he's good at everything, so I think that cancels it out. Hera tells Achilles to show himself to the Trojans. While Thetis journeyed to Olympus, the Greeks, fleeing with shouts of terror from man-killing Hector, reached the ships by the Hellespont. But the bronze-greaved Achaeans had not yet borne Patroclus's body out of range of all the missiles, and it was once more overtaken by the Trojan warriors and charioteers, led by Hector, son of Priam, fiery in his valor. 3 times glorious Hector ran in from behind, shouting fiercely to his Trojans, and seized the corpse's feet, eager to drag it back. 3 times the Iantes, resisting furiously, drove him from the body. But Hector, trusting in his strength, now attacking them in the turmoil, now standing off and calling to his men, would not retreat. They could no more frighten Hector off than a pair of shepherds in the fields trying to drive away a tawny lion hungry for his kill. Even now he might have dragged away the corpse and won eternal glory, had not swift-footed Iris, sent by Hera, unbeknown to Zeus and the other gods except Pallas Athena, carried a message to Achilles to arm for war. Reaching him, she uttered winged words. "Up, son of Peleus, most daunting of men, save the body of Patroclus. They are fighting over it beside the ships. Men are dying while your Greeks try to protect his corpse, and the Trojans attack, longing to drag him off to windy Troy. Glorious Hector is their leader, who sets his heart on slicing his head from the tender neck and fixing it on a stake above the wall. Up then, and no more idling there. Fear shame in your heart if Patroclus becomes a plaything for the dogs of Troy. You will be the one to reproach if the corpse comes mutilated to our hands." Fleet-footed noble Achilles answered, "Iris, dear goddess, which of the immortals sends you with this message?" And Iris, swift as the wind, replied, "Zeus's glorious wife Hera sent me. The son of Cronos, Zeus the king supreme, knows nothing of it, nor do any of the gods and goddesses of snow-topped Olympus, but Pallas Athena." "But how can I go into action?
said swift-footed Achilles. "The Trojans have my armor, and my dear mother told me not to ready myself for battle until I see her here again. She has promised fresh armor for me from Lord Hephaestus. I know of no other arms I could use except for Telamonian Ajax's shield, but he, I imagine, is in the front ranks fighting, plying his spear to defend dead Patroclus." Iris, swift as the wind, replied once more, "Your armor is in their hands, that we know. But go to the trench as you are and show yourself to the Trojans, hoping they fear the sight of you enough to cease from fighting. It would give the Greek warriors chance to catch their breath, exhausted as they are, for there are such chances in battle." Fleet-footed Iris departed, while Achilles, beloved of Zeus, rose to his feet. Athena flung her tasseled aegis over his broad shoulders, shed a bright golden mist about his head, and made a fiery glare blaze from the man. Like the beacons that one by one flare out at sunset from an island besieged by an enemy, its city cloaked all day by smoke rising to high heaven, for whose safety men fought from the battlements all day in bitter conflict. Like those beacons, whose light shines out on high for all their neighbors to see, in hopes they might send their ships to the rescue, so the blaze shone from Achilles' head to the heavens. He took his stand by the wall beyond the trench, but remembering his mother's careful injunction, avoided joining the Greek ranks. He stood and shouted, and Pallas Athena echoed him from afar, confounding the Trojans utterly. Achilles' voice was so loud, clear as the trumpet sounding from some beleaguered city, beset by a lethal force. The hearts of the Trojans were appalled when they heard that voice of bronze, and the long-maned horses wheeled the chariots round, filled with dread. Terror-stricken, the charioteers saw the restless fire blazing from the head of Peleus' mighty son, fed by the goddess, bright-eyed Athena. 3 times noble Achilles shouted beyond the trench. 3 times the Trojans and their allies reeled in panic. A dozen of their finest warriors died there and then, ringed by their own chariots and spears. But the Greeks, overjoyed, bore Patroclus out of range and laid him on his bier, while his dear friends stood round it weeping. And fleet-footed Achilles joined them, shedding hot tears when he saw his faithful friend lying there, mangled by the cruel bronze. With chariot and horses he had sent him to the battle, never to welcome him back alive again. And now ox-eyed Queen Hera told the tireless sun to return, though unwillingly, to ocean's stream. At last he set, and the noble Achaeans rested from mighty conflict and war's evils. The Trojan Assembly. Fake it till you make it, impress them with a good outfit trope. Just show up and yell really loudly. Be real confident. They'll be scared of you. It'll all work out. The Trojans, for their part, having withdrawn from battle, loosed the swift horses from their chariots, and without thinking of eating, gathered in assembly. They stood throughout, too anxious to sit, unnerved by Achilles' sudden appearance after his long absence from the front. The cautious Polydamas, son of Panthus, spoke first. He alone looked before and after. He was a friend of Hector's, born on the same night, the best in oratory as Hector was in war. He addressed the assembly now, speaking for their good. "Think about all this carefully, my friends. Since we are so far from the city walls, I recommend that we retreat there, and not wait here by the ships till dawn. The Achaeans were easier to handle, while this man quarreled with King Agamemnon. Then I too was pleased to spend the night close to the swift ships, hoping to destroy them. But now I fear fleet-footed Achilles greatly. He is too impetuous to settle for fighting in the plain, where Greeks and Trojans suffer war equally. He will attack the city, putting our women folk at threat. Take my advice and retreat, or expect the worst. Fleet-footed Achilles must bow to a mortal knight for now, but if he enters the battle armed at dawn, you will all know of it. Whoever returns alive to sacred Ilium will rejoice, but many the dogs and vultures will devour. Far from my ears may such news stay. Yet if you follow my advice, however unwillingly, we'll assemble in the square tonight, surrounded by the walls and lofty gates, with their high gleaming doors bolted tight. Then at dawn we'll man the walls fully armed, and if Achilles decides to quit the ships and attack the city, so much the worse for him. He'll soon retreat again, when he's had enough of driving his proud horses to and fro beneath the battlements in vain. Even his courageous heart will not sack the city. The running dogs will eat him first. But Hector of the gleaming helm replied with a flash of anger, Polydamas, I can't approve of that idea, penning ourselves inside the city. Are you not tired of being caged by those walls? There was a time when men acclaimed Priam's city for its wealth of gold and bronze, but our fine treasures and many dear possessions have been traded to Phrygia and fair Maeonia, since we incurred Zeus's wrath. Don't be foolish with your advice. Now Zeus, the son of devious Cronos, grants me the power to win glory by the ships and drive the Greeks to the sea. I'll not let a single Trojan obey. Rather we'll do as I advise. Go to eat company by company. Keep a good watch here and stay awake. And any of the Trojans concerned for his possessions at home can gather them together and hand them over for all to share. Better they profit from them than the Greeks. But at dawn, and armed, we'll attack the ships. And if indeed Achilles is stirred to action, the worse for him. I won't run from him in a battle, but fight him face to face, and see whether he shall win or I. The war god treats all men alike, and often kills the one who thought to kill. The lamentation for Patroclus. No, there's charm juice everywhere. Also, welcome, Daddy Ham. The Trojans foolishly acclaimed his speech. Pallas Athena robbed them of their judgment in praising Hector, whose plan was faulty, and not Polydamas, whose advice was good, and so they took their meal throughout the ranks, while all night long the Greeks lamented Patroclus. The leader in that outpouring of grief was Achilles, who placed his warlike hands on his friend's chest, and groaned endlessly, like a bearded lion whose cubs a stag hunter has snatched from some dense thicket. The lion returns and grieves at their absence, then filled with fierce wrath, tracks the man through many a glade, hoping to find them. So Achilles grieved among the Myrmidons. How idle the promise I gave to Menoetius in my father's house, as I tried to solace him, that when I'd sacked Troy, I'd bring back his glorious son to Opoeis for him, with all his share of the spoils. But Zeus does not fulfill all our plans, and we are both fated to stain the selfsame earth here at Troy with our blood, for I shall not return home either, to be welcomed by Peleus the charioteer, my aged father, and my mother Thetis in her palace. Instead, this soil shall cover me. And since I'll go beneath the ground after you, my Patroclus, I shall not hold your funeral rites, my brave friend, till I return with the head of your killer, Hector's head, and my armor, and before your pyre I'll slit the throats of 12 fine youths of Troy, to slake my anger at your slaughter. Till then, lie here, like this, beside the beaked ships, while full-breasted Trojan and Dardanian women, the ones we labored with our hands and spears to capture when we took their rich populated cities, grieve for you and shed tears night and day. With these words, great Achilles told his comrades to set a large cauldron on the fire, and heat water to fill a bath, and wash the clotted blood from Patroclus. So they took wood and kindled it, filled the cauldron and set it on the blazing coals, and watched the flames play about its bronze belly till the water boiled. Then they filled the bath from the cauldron, and washed him, and anointed him with rich oil, filling the wounds with 9-year-old unguent. Then they laid his body on the bier, shrouding it with soft linen cloth from head to foot, and on top of that a white robe. And all night long, round fleet-footed Achilles, the Myrmidons moaned in grief for Patroclus. Watching them, Zeus spoke to his sister-wife Hera. Once more, my ox-eyed queen, you get your way, spurring fleet-footed Achilles into action. Those long-haired Greeks might as well be your own offspring. Dread son of Cronos, the ox-eyed queen replied. What can you mean? Even mere mortals that lack my wisdom will do what they can for a friend. How could I, the greatest of goddesses, doubly so as the eldest and the wife of the king of all the gods, how could I refrain in my anger with these Trojans from causing them all the trouble I can?
Thetis asks Hephaestus for help. That's a little excessive. Oh, Daddy Brian, put your hands upon me. As they spoke, silver-footed Thetis reached Hephaestus' house of imperishable bronze, adorned with stars and finest among those of the immortals, built by the lame god himself. She found him running back and forth to his bellows, sweating with toil, as he fashioned 20 triple-legged tables to stand round the walls of his great hall. He had fitted their legs with golden wheels, so they might take themselves to the gods' assembly if he wished, and roll home again, a wondrous sight. They were not quite finished, still lacking elaborate handles which he was burnishing while forging their rivets. It was as he labored at these with all his care and skill that silver-footed Thetis approached. Lovely Charis of the glistening veil, wife of the illustrious lame god, seeing her, came forward, took both her hands in hers, and spoke. Thetis of the long robe, honored and welcome, though unaccustomed guest, what brings you here? Follow me inside so I may offer you hospitality. So saying, she led the goddess inside and made her sit on a splendid chair, elaborately adorned with silver studs and with a footstool beneath. Then she summoned Hephaestus, the master smith. Hephaestus, come quickly. Thetis has need of you. Hephaestus answered at once. Ah, a goddess I honor and revere is here in my house. She who saved me in my hour of agony after my mother Hera, shamed by my lameness, threw me from Olympus. How I'd have suffered if Thetis and Eurynome, daughter of encircling ocean, had not taken me to their breasts. Staying with them 9 years in their deep cave, I worked away at fine ornaments, brooches and spiral bracelets, necklaces and rosettes, while round me the vast stream of ocean flowed, seething with foam. Neither gods nor mortals knew, only Thetis and Eurynome, who rescued me. Now Thetis is here, and I must repay her fully for saving my life. Show her hospitality while I put my tools and bellows away. So saying, his huge form rose from the anvil, and panting heavily he limped about, though agile enough on his withered legs. He moved the bellows from the fire, and collecting his tools together, placed them in a silver chest. Then he wiped his hands and face, huge neck, and shaggy breast with a sponge, and donned his tunic. Grasping a thick staff, he limped from the forge, supported by servants made of gold, fashioned like living girls, who attended swiftly on their master. As well as the use of their limbs, they had intellect, and the immortals gave them skill in subtle crafts. They supported Hephaestus as he limped towards Thetis, and seated himself on the gleaming chair. Then he took her hand and spoke to her. Thetis of the long robe, honored and welcome, though unaccustomed guest, what brings you here? Say what you need, and my heart prompts me to fulfill it, if it can be done, and I can do it. Thetis, weeping, answered, Is there a goddess, Hephaestus, who has suffered more heartfelt sorrows at the hands of Zeus than I? I alone of all the daughters of the sea he wedded to a mere human, Peleus, son of Aeacus, and unwillingly it was that I lay with a mortal man. He keeps to his palace now, weighed down sadly by the years, while I suffer further grief. I brought a mighty and peerless son into this world, greatest of warriors. I nursed him like a shoot in a fertile orchard, and like a sapling swiftly he grew. I sent him to Ilium with the beaked ships, to fight the Trojans, but I shall never welcome him home once more to the house of Peleus. And even now, while he lives and knows the light of day, he suffers beyond my help, though I go to him. King Agamemnon has taken from him the girl the Achaeans gave him as a prize. Wasting his heart in grief for her, he refused to ward off ruin from the Greeks, despite the elders offering him fine gifts, and the Trojans penned them in by their ships' sterns and proved immovable. Then he let Patroclus don his own armor and join the battle with his Myrmidons. All day they fought by the Scaean gate, and would have sacked the city, if Apollo had not caused the death of brave Patroclus at the height of his success, and granted the final act to Hector. So I have come to clasp your knees,
and ask you to give my son, who is doomed to an early death, a shield and a helmet, a breastplate and bronze greaves, fitted with ankle pieces, to replace the armor lost when the Trojans killed his faithful friend, for whom my son now lies in the dust, struck with grief to his very heart." The master smith replied, "Take heart and be easy in your mind. I wish that I could save him from sad death when the fateful time arrives, as easily as I can grant him splendid armor, splendid enough to make many a man marvel who gazes on it some fine day." Hephaestus forges Achilles' armor. I too like Hephaestus. With this, Hephaestus returned to his forge, turned his bellows on the fire, and ordered them to begin. The set of 20 nozzles blew on the crucibles, sending out a varying blast of air at need, aiding his careful efforts as required, at every stage of the work. Into the crucibles went stubborn bronze, tin, precious gold, and silver. He set up a great anvil on its block, and took a massive hammer in one hand and a pair of tongs in the other. Then he first made a shield, broad and solid, adorning it skillfully everywhere, and setting round it a glittering triple rim, with a silver strap attached. 5 layers it had, and he decorated it with subtle art. On it he showed the earth, sea, sky, the tireless sun and the full moon, and all the constellations that crown the heavens, the Pleiades, Hyades, great Orion, and the Bear, that men also call the Wain, that circles around in its place, never bathing in ocean's stream, while gazing warily at Orion. On it he showed 2 fine cities of mortal men. In one there were marriage feasts, and to the light of blazing torches the brides were led from their rooms and through the city to the sound of wedding songs. Young men circled in the dance, whirling round to flutes and lyres, while women stood in their doorways gazing. But the men had gathered an assembly, where 2 of them were arguing a case, contesting the blood price to be paid for another's death. The defendant claimed he had paid all that was right, putting this to the people, but the accuser refused his acceptance, and the pair of them sought an arbitration. Both were cheered by their supporters, whom the heralds firmly restrained. The elders sat on the sacred bench, a semicircle of polished stone, receiving the speaker's staff from the loud-voiced heralds, and rising to give judgment in turn. At their feet lay 2 talents of gold, the fee for the one who gave the soundest judgment. The other city was besieged by 2 armies clad in glittering armor. Their plan was to attempt to sack it, or accept instead a half of all its wealth. But the citizens resisted, and secretly were arming for an ambush, their beloved wives, the children, and the old left to defend the walls, while the rest set out, led by Ares and Athena, all made of gold. Tall and beautiful in their golden clothes and armor, as gods should look, they rose above the smaller warriors at their feet. Another scene showed them by a river, a watering place for the herds, and a likely place to mount their ambush, and they were seated in their bronze armor. Then in another 2 scouts were posted, waiting for sight of a herd of sheep or glossy cattle. Then there was shown the herd's arrival, with 2 herdsmen behind playing flutes, ignorant of the cunning ambush. Then the ambushers were seen, rushing out to attack them as they neared, quickly cutting out the herd of cattle and the fine white flock of sheep, killing the herdsmen. Next the besiegers were shown sitting in assembly, or rising at the sound of cattle, or mounting behind their high-stepping steeds as racing towards the action. And finally, he showed the ranks in battle at the river, attacking each other with bronze-tipped spears. Strife and panic were at work, and ruthless fate, here laying her hands on one man freshly wounded, there on another still unscathed, and next dragging a corpse through the chaos by its feet. The cloak about her shoulders was red with human blood. Just like living men, they seemed to clash and fight and drag away the bodies of those killed. On the shield also he depicted fallow land, soft, rich, broad, and thrice plowed, and on it plowmen were driving their teams to and fro, and where they turned at the field's end a man held a cup of honeyed wine in his hands to give to them, so they were eager to wheel about at the end of the rich furrow. Behind them the field, though made of gold, looked black as if it had been plowed, a wonderful feature of the work. We are reading so much about the decoration on some armor of a man who is not going to survive the next few chapters. I don't know, I was just mentioning that. On the shield also he showed a royal estate, where laborers were reaping with sharp sickles in their hands. Armfuls of corn were falling in swaths along the rows, while sheaves were being bound with twists of straw. Boys were gathering up the armfuls and carrying them to the three binders, while the king, staff in hand, stood joyfully and silently beside them. Heralds in the background beneath an oak were readying a feast, dressing a great sacrificial ox they had slaughtered, while women sprinkled the meat with white barley ready for the laborers to eat. On the shield also he portrayed in gold a fine vineyard laden with grapes, though the clusters of heavy fruit were black, and the vines were tied to silver poles. Oh, did I just read that? No. I forget what I read. Round it was a ditch of blue enamel, and outside that a fence of tin, and a single path led to it, that served for all the coming and going of harvest time. Girls and youths were joyfully carrying off the ripe grapes in wicker baskets, while in their midst a boy sang of Linos, in a sweet treble voice. How do you know? To the pleasant music of the clear-toned lyre. They all skipped along with a chorus of cries, beating the earth in time with dancing feet. Is it just a moving picture on the armor? I guess it is a godlike thing to be able to do. Then on the shield he showed a herd of straight-horned cattle in gold and tin, lowing as they trotted from their byre to graze at a murmuring stream beside the swaying rushes. 4 herdsmen, also in gold, walked beside them, and 9 swift dogs ran behind. But in the next scene 2 savage lions in amongst the leaders were gripping a bull that bellowed loudly, dragging it off, pursued by youths and dogs. The lions had torn the bull's flank open and were devouring its innards, lapping the dark blood, while the herdsmen tried in vain to set the swift hounds on them, the dogs scared to grapple, but running in barking, then leaping aside. On the shield also the lame master smith added meadowland full of white sheep, in a fine valley with sheepfolds, huts, and pens. Then he inlaid an intricate dancing floor, like that which Daedalus once made in spacious Knossos for long-haired Ariadne. Young men and girls worth many cattle were dancing there, their hands clasping one another's wrists. The girls wore white linen with pretty garlands on their heads, the young men fine woven tunics with a soft sheen, daggers of gold hanging from their silver belts. Here they danced lightly with skillful steps, like the motion a potter gives his wheel when testing it out to see how it will run. There they ran in lines to meet each other. And enjoying the lovely scene, a host of people stood round about, while a pair of acrobats whirled among them, keeping time to the dance. Finally, round the rim of the solid shield he laid out the mighty stream of ocean. When the large, heavy shield was done, he made a breastplate for Achilles that shone brighter than flame, a massive helmet to fit his head, a fine one cleverly embossed with a crest of gold, and greaves of pliable tin. Okay, so he just spent 8 years on the shield, and then he was just like, here's a helmet and some greaves and also a breastplate. And when the lame god had wrought the armor, he took it and set it down in front of Thetis. Then she swooped like a falcon from snow-topped Olympus, bearing Hephaestus' gleaming gift. And that is the end of Book 18. I don't think I'm going to need to take a full 15-minute break. But I am going to take a small break. And we're going to get one more book in because this one is only 10 pages. The previous one was 15. So we'll take the time to do that. I'm not going to go to a BRB screen, but I will go ahead and play, bring that music back up. Okay. And, I'm gonna take a drink, probably go to the bathroom, and run some ads. Because I can.
And then we'll finish the next book, and then we'll call it for the day. I'll be right back. Once the ads are done, I'll continue the reading. I'm running ads. Oh. Sorry, I didn't look up at the first message. Alright. That's the end of the ads, because I can actually track that when I run them. And now we'll read book 19. Which according to this is about 10 pages, so it should be a short read. And then I want to check how long the next chapter will be for next time. Fairly short, 15 pages. And we might try to go for 3 books next time as well. So we're aiming for a little more than 40 pages per stream. Okay. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring this back down. And Book 19. Achilles ends his quarrel with Agamemnon. As dawn in saffron robes rose from the stream of ocean, bringing light to gods and men, Thetis reached the ships bearing Hephaestus' gift. She found her beloved son groaning aloud, his arms around Patroclus' body, while his men stood by weeping bitterly. The shining goddess came and took his hand, saying, "My child, you must let him go, however great your sorrow, and leave him here, dead for all time, slain by the will of heaven. Now take up instead Hephaestus' marvelous armor, more beautiful than any that ever adorned a man's shoulders." The goddess set the armor down before him, and it rang aloud in its splendor. Then the Myrmidons were seized with awe, and none dared look on it, but shrank away. But the more Achilles gazed, the greater rose his desire for vengeance, and his eyes flashed terribly, like coals beneath his lids, as he lifted the gods' marvelous gifts and exulted.
When he had looked his fill on this splendor, he spoke to Thetis winged words. Mother, the god grants me a gift fit for the immortals, such as no mortal smith could fashion. Now I shall arm myself for war. Yet I fear lest flies infest the wounds the bronze blades made, and maggots breed in the corpse of brave Patroclus, and now his life is fled, rot the flesh, and disfigure all his body. Excuse me. But silver-footed Thetis the divine replied, Fear not, my son. I will defend it from the mass of fierce insects that feed on men who die in battle. Though he lie here a year, his flesh will be sound, even sounder than it is now. Now call the Achaeans to assembly, and end your quarrel with the king. Arm for war and summon all your valor. So saying, she filled his limbs with strength, his heart with courage. Then she infused ambrosia and amber nectar through the nostrils into the corpse, so that Patroclus's flesh might be preserved, while noble Achilles strode along the seashore giving his war cry, rousing the Achaeans. Now he had appeared after his long absence from the bitter fight. Even those who normally kept to the ships, the pilots, helmsmen, and stewards, flocked to the assembly. Diomedes, the steadfast, and noble Odysseus, those servants of Ares, came limping, leaning on their spears, still suffering from their wounds, to sit at the front of the gathering. While last of all came the wounded Agamemnon, hurt by Coum, Antenor's son, in battle, with a thrust of the bronze-tipped spear. When all the Greeks had gathered, fleet-footed Achilles rose to speak. Son of Atreus, was it good for us to quarrel in this sad way and eat our hearts out over a girl? I had rather Artemis had fired an arrow and killed her when I sacked Lyrnessus and took her as mine. Then fewer Greeks would have filled their mouths with the dust of this wide earth, slain by the Trojans while I nursed fierce anger. The Achaeans will long remember our quarrel that only aided Hector and his men. But these things are past and done for all our sorrow, and we must quell the anger in our hearts. My wrath is at an end. I'd not prolong our dispute endlessly. Come, rouse the long-haired Greeks to war, so I may attack these Trojans and try their mettle once more, and see if they still dare to camp by the ships tonight. Many, I think, will be glad to escape my spear and the pain of war, and sink to their knees alive and rest. Agamemnon speaks of Ate. The bronze-grieved Greeks were delighted by his speech, overjoyed that Peleus' great son had renounced his anger. King Agamemnon, sitting due to his wound rather than standing to address them, now had his say. My friends, Danaan warriors, servants of Ares, it is good to grant a speaker an uninterrupted hearing. Interruptions trouble even the skilled orator. And how can anyone speak or hear in a babel of noise? Even the clearest voice would go unheard. What I say is aimed at the son of Peleus, but you other Argives should listen and take note. You Achaeans have often criticized me as he has done, but the fault was not mine. Zeus, fate, and fury, who walks in darkness, are to blame, for blinding my judgment that day in the assembly, when on my own authority I confiscated Achilles' prize. What choice did I have? There is a goddess who decides these things, Ate, Zeus's oldest daughter, blinds us all, accursed as she is. Those tender feet of hers never touch the ground, but pass through men's minds, causing harm, ensnaring this one or another. Even Zeus, they say, was blinded by her once, though he's supreme amongst god and man. Hera it was, a mere woman, cunningly tricked him, when Alcmene was due to bear the mighty Heracles in turreted Thebes. Zeus had made a proud boast to the immortals. Listen, gods and goddesses, while I speak what my heart prompts. This very day, Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth, will bring a boy child into this world, born of a race descended from me, who will hold power over all his neighbors. Then it was Queen Hera showed her cunning. As usual, you'll play the deceiver, and nothing will come of your words. So then, Olympian, give us instead your solemn oath that the man, born of your stock, who issues from between a woman's thighs today, will indeed hold power over all his neighbors. Zeus, misled by her cunning, in his blindness swore a mighty oath. Then Hera darted swiftly from high Olympus to Argos in Achaea, where she knew that Niobe, noble wife of Sthenelus, Perseus' son, was 7 months pregnant with a boy child. Hera induced the child prematurely while restraining the Elethiae and delaying Alcmene's labor. Then she told Zeus, son of Cronus, the news. Father Zeus, lord of the lightning flash, a word with you. That mighty man is born indeed who shall rule the Argives, fitting truly for a child of your lineage. It is Eurystheus, a boy child for Sthenelus, Perseus' son. At her words he felt a sharp pain deep in his mind, and in a blaze of anger he at once seized Ate by her gleaming tresses, swearing a mighty oath that she who blinds us all should never again be found on Olympus or in the starry heavens. With that he whirled her round and flung her from the sky down to the ploughed fields of men below. Zeus would think of her and groan later, whenever he saw his dear son Heracles toiling at Eurystheus' labors. I too, when great Hector of the gleaming helm was slaughtering Argives by the sterns of our ships, could not forget that Ate, who had blinded me before. But since I was blinded indeed, and Zeus robbed me of my senses, I'll make amends and compensate you richly. I am ready to offer you all the gifts that noble Odysseus promised when he visited your hut the night before last. So prepare for battle and rouse your men, or you can wait a little despite your eagerness for war if you wish, and my attendants will bring you the gifts from my ships, so you can see I give you what will ease your heart. Ian, thank you so much for paying that forward. I appreciate you hanging out with us today, and I appreciate you gifting a sub to Hollow Force. Thank you very much. Odysseus gives his advice. Fleet-footed Achilles replied, Agamemnon, king of men, glorious son of Atreus, grant me your gifts if you wish, as is right, or keep them. It is up to you. But for now let us think of war. It is wrong to waste time in talking and delay the great work still to do. Let Achilles then be your example as you face the enemy, fighting at the front and slaughtering the ranks of Trojans with his bronze spear. Wise Odysseus now disagreed. Godlike Achilles, brave indeed you are, but don't force the sons of Achaea to fight the Trojans and battle for Ilium without food in their bellies. When once the battle is joined and the god breathes courage into both the armies, we're in for a long struggle. Order the Greeks to eat and drink by their swift ships, to give them strength and heart. No man can fight a whole day through, battling the enemy from dawn to dusk without sustenance. Though a man's heart may be filled with eagerness for war, his limbs betray him. Hunger and thirst overcome him, and he sinks to the ground as he dashes forward. But full of food and wine, a man can fight all day, heart filled with courage, and his limbs unwearied till battle ends. So dismiss the men and order them to eat. As for the gifts, let King Agamemnon have them brought to the assembly, where all the Greeks can see them, and you can be satisfied. Then let him stand in our midst and swear that he has never bedded the girl, a thing customary between men and women, and do you show graciousness in return. Then let him feast you richly in his hut to make amends, so you may lack nothing that is due you. And Atreides, be more just to others in future. There is nothing wrong with a king making amends when he has been the first to show anger. King Agamemnon replied, Son of Laertes, your words please me, since you state the whole thing honestly. I will swear the oath as my heart prompts me, nor do I perjure myself before heaven in so doing. Let Achilles stay here with you all, despite his eagerness for battle, until I have had the gifts brought here and sworn the solemn oath. I charge you with this. Do you yourself choose some of the best young men in the army, and have them bring the gifts from my ship, everything we promised to Achilles when you saw him and the women. And let Talthybius ready a boar to sacrifice to Zeus and the sun here in the camp. But swift-footed Achilles still demurred. Agamemnon, king of men, most glorious son of Atreus, It would still be better to do all this when my fury has lessened, and a lull occurs in the fighting. Those to whom Hector, son of Priam, killed when Zeus gave him power, lie there mangled, and you both talk of eating? I would rather send the sons of Achaea into battle fasting, and feast at sunset when vengeance is sated. I at least will not eat or drink till then, while my friend lies in my hut, mangled by sharp blades, his feet towards the entrance, his comrades grieving round him. What fills my mind rather is the thought of slaughter, of blood and the moans of dying men. But nimble-witted Odysseus overruled him. Achilles, son of Peleus, you are our finest warrior, finer than I and stronger with the spear, yet in counsel I am your superior, being older and more experienced. So suffer yourself to hear me out. Men are quickly exhausted in a fight, when the bronze blades, like sickles, strew the field with cut straw and yield a bitter harvest. And Zeus who rules wars reaping, holds the balance. You want the Greeks to mourn the dead by starving, when hundreds are killed day after day. When would they ever eat? No, we must bury the dead, weep for a day indeed, but harden our hearts. Those who are left alive by this hated conflict must still eat and drink, so as to fight on, without respite in this heavy armor. And when the summons comes, let no man hang back, waiting for a second summons. This is it. It will go hard with anyone who stays behind beside the ships. We will advance together and take the fight to these horse-taming Trojans. The Greeks sacrifice to the gods. So saying, he left for Agamemnon's hut, taking Nestor's sons along, with Meges, son of Phyleus, Thoas, Meriones, Lycomedes, son of Creon, and Melanippus. No sooner said than done. The 7 tripods, 20 gleaming cauldrons, 12 horses, 7 women skilled in fine handiwork, with lovely Briseis the 8th, were all produced as promised, and Odysseus weighed out 20 talents of gold. Then he led the way while the youths brought the gifts to the assembly. There Agamemnon rose to his feet, while Talthybius, of godlike voice, stood beside the king, restraining the sacrificial boar. Atreides drew the knife he always carried next to the scabbard of his sword, cut a swatch of hair from the boar's head, and raised his arms in prayer to Zeus. The Argives listened in silence as they ought, while Agamemnon prayed, gazing at the sky. I call first on Zeus, highest and best of gods, then on earth and sun, and on the Furies, who punish perjury in the underworld, as witnesses that I never laid hand on the girl Briseis. I never made love to her, and that during her stay in my hut she was left untouched. If a word of this prove untrue, may the gods make me suffer all the retribution they exact from those who take their names in vain. With this he slashed the boar's throat with the merciless bronze, and Talthybius, lifting the carcass, turned and flung it into the depths of the grey sea as food for fish. Now Achilles rose and spoke to the warlike Argives. How great the blindness Father Zeus inflicts on men! Agamemnon could not have roused my anger so, nor would he have taken the girl against my will if Zeus had not first decided that many Greeks should die. Now let us eat, so we can go to war. The troops quickly scattered to their ships, while the brave Myrmidons gathered up the gifts and led the women to Achilles' huts, while his noble squires drove the horses in among his own herd. Achilles grieves for Patroclus. When Briseis, beautiful as golden Aphrodite, saw the corpse of Patroclus mangled by the bronze blades, she flung herself on the body, shrieking loudly, and tore with her hands at her breasts, her tender neck and lovely face. And the goddess-like woman wailed in her lament, Patroclus dear to my heart, when I left this hut you were alive, and now alas I return, prince among men, to find you a corpse. So evil dogs my steps. I saw the husband, to whom my royal parents married me, lie there dead by our city wall, mangled by the cruel bronze, and saw my 3 beloved brothers meet a like fate. But you dried my tears when fleet-footed Achilles killed my husband and sacked King Minos' city, saying you would see me wed to Achilles, that he would take me in a ship to Phthia, and grant me a marriage feast among the Myrmidons. You were always gentle with me. Now I will mourn you forever.
So Briseis grieved, and the other women took up her lament, mourning Patroclus. It is true, but also their own sorrows. As for Achilles, the Achaean elders gathered round him, begging him to eat, but he groaned and refused. Indulge me, dear friends. Don't ask me to sate my hunger or thirst while I suffer so. I will not break my fast before sunset. He sent the generals away except for Atreidae, noble Odysseus, Nestor, Idomeneus, and the old charioteer Phoenix, who all tried to bring him solace in his deep grief. But he refused to be comforted, longing only to enter the bloody maw of battle. He heaved a heavy sigh, stirred by memory. How often, my unlucky, my beloved friend, you would swiftly and deftly serve up a savory meal for us in our hut, when we Greeks were about to attack the horse-taming Trojans. Now you lie here mangled, while I, consumed by grief, lack the heart to eat or drink, though the food is ready and to hand. What worse could I suffer? News of my father's death? He, alive in Phthia, sheds tears, no doubts, for his absent son, warring far off in an alien land, battling with Trojans over wretched Helen. Or news of my dear son's death, assuming he still lives, godlike Neoptolemus, who is growing up in Skyros. I'd like to think that I alone would die here in the land of Troy, far from the horse pastures of Argus, and that you would be the one to return to Phthia, and fetch my son home with you from Skyros in a swift black ship, and show him all his inheritance, my goods, my slaves, my great high-roofed halls. For Peleus, I thought, would either be dead by then or too feeble, weighed down by the hated burden of old age and the pain of waiting for the sad news of my death. Ragnak, the day of birth was this was from the 14th. My day of birth was the 15th. Also, welcome in. Achilles arms for battle. As he lamented, the generals groaned in sympathy, each filled with memories of home, and Zeus, who saw them grieving, pitied them, and spoke swiftly to Athena. My child, have you forgotten Achilles, your favorite? Are your thoughts wholly elsewhere? There he sits by the curved ships, grieving for his friend, feeling no hunger, refusing to eat, while his comrades dine. Go and infuse some nectar and sweet ambrosia into him, and save him from starvation. Athena scarcely needed prompting, and roused by his words, she swooped down from the sky, like a long-winged falcon shrieking through the air. While the whole Greek army prepared for battle, she infused Achilles' breast with nectar and sweet ambrosia, then returned to her almighty father's halls as the Achaean host advanced from the shore. Thick and fast as the snowflakes on the blast of some northerly gale, sent by Zeus himself through the cold, bright sky, so the gleaming helms, bossed shields, massive breastplates, and ash spears poured from the ships. The glittering of armor lit the sky, earth shone with the glow of bronze, while the ground rang to the sound of marching men. In their midst, Achilles armed for battle, his heart filled with unbearable grief. Unbearable. He gnashed his teeth, eyes blazing like fire, and in his fierce anger against Troy he donned the gifts of divine Hephaestus' toil. First he clasped the fine greaves with silver ankle pieces round his legs. Next he strapped on the breastplate and slung the silver-studded bronze sword across his shoulders. Then he grasped the great solid shield that shone like the moon from afar, like the glow of a blazing fire from a lonely upland farm seen by sailors whom a storm drives over the plentiful deep far from their friends. So from Achilles' splendid, richly ornamented shield the sheen rose to heaven. He lifted the massive horsehair-crested helmet and placed it on his head, where it shone like a star, and above it the golden plumes danced, that Hephaestus had set thickly round the crest. Noble Achilles then flexed the armor to check that it fitted tightly, yet still allowed free movement for his strong limbs. He was overjoyed to find he felt as light as if he had wings. Then he took his father's spear from its stand, the long, massive, weighty spear of ash from the summit of Pelion that Chiron gave his beloved father for the killing of men, and that Achilles alone now of all the Greeks could wield. Meanwhile Automedon and Alcmeus busied themselves harnessing the horses, tightening the strong breast straps on their chests,
settling the bits in their mouths and looping the reins back to the wooden chariot. Then Automedon, grasping the gleaming, well-balanced whip in his hand, leapt aboard the chariot, while Achilles stepped up behind him, fully armed and shining like Hyperion, the bright sun. Then he gave a fierce cry of reproof to his father's team. "Xanthus and Balius, Podarge's famous foals, this time think of a way to bring your master back alive when the fight is done, not leave him dead on the field as you did brave Patroclus." Then Xanthus of the glancing feet, whom white-armed Hera granted power of speech, replied from beneath the yoke, bowing his head so his mane streamed down to the ground. "This once, mighty Achilles, we will save you, yes, even though the hour of your doom draws nigh. Nor indeed will we be the cause of your death even then. Rather a mightier god and relentless fate. It was not through any carelessness or idleness of ours that the Trojans were able to strip Patroclus of your armor. But Apollo, best of gods, son of Leto of the lovely tresses, slew him before the army and granted Hector glory. Though we run swift as we can, swift as Zephyrus, the western wind, who flies fastest of all the winds, they say, yet you are fated still to be conquered in battle by a mortal man and a god." At that point, the Furies checked his utterance, while swift-footed Achilles answered excitedly, "What need for you, Xanthus, to prophesy my fate? I know well enough I am doomed to die here, far from my dear parents, yet I will not end till I have given the Trojans their bellyful of war." With that he raised his battle cry, driving his immortal horses to the front. And that is the end of Book 19. And we will continue the reading of the Iliad next Sunday. I will have to double check the schedule. Give me a moment. Let me see. We'll do that. We'll do it at 4 as per usual. So it doesn't look like next Sunday will be a different scenario there. So we'll start at 4 as we usually do. But there will be a change in the schedule. It'll either be sometime before my work from 1:30 to 7:30 my time. So possibly a 10 to 12 or 10 to 1 stream. Something like that. So prior to my work tomorrow. Or it'll be post 7:30, so maybe an 8 to 10 or 8:30 to 10:30 stream. And we'll be doing Mahjong Monday then. Mike, I appreciate you gifting the sub to Myra. Thank you so much. Thank you for hanging out. Ragnak, it's okay that you missed it. We all have things that we need to do. Thank you for the happy birthday. Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate you being here. I dropped something. What did I drop? You have good night. Yes, Dana, you have good night. You too. Thank you. My birthday. Hey Dana. Hey Mike. Thank you all for stopping by. Thank you all for hanging out. I really appreciate it. But yeah, we're going to continue this. I didn't drop that, Ragnak, but I appreciate you picking that up for me. Thank you for the gift to Tedious Toast. I really appreciate it. You're all silly. I really appreciate you. So let's take a look here. We'll do a quick refresh. Yeah, I know who we're sending it to. Okay. Seriously, y'all, thank you so much. I'll put stuff up in the Discord polls on whether I should hold on. Make sure you get the name right. Yeah, I'm making sure I get the name right. Don't worry. I copied it this time instead of just typing it out from memory and not double checking. Yeah, Ragnak, yeah. So there's the Discord for people who want to
join, be a part of it, etc. Have power over what I play, when I play, etc. So like I said, my schedule is going to be wonky for the rest of the month. It's a lot of my work is going to be from 1:30 to 7:30 Central Time, and that's PM obviously. I don't do AM shifts, so it's either going to have to be a few hours prior to that or a few hours after that. So there will be chance of I'll put up a poll to see what people think, whether I need to get up earlier or whether I need to stay up later, that kind of thing. And hopefully work schedule will work itself out to the point where I'll no longer have to do stuff like this. But for right now, I'm still learning. They're still having me do a bunch of different things, learn how to open, learn how to close, all this other stuff. So once I've gained enough knowledge at this new job that I've been at for about a month now, that's when everything will hopefully work out. That's 10 hours of rain and sound relaxation. 2 a.m. streams hype. You know, if that's what a lot of people want, I won't have to get up early for work. I can just sleep in. So, you know, we'll work out times. We'll work out times based on when I have to work. I'll whatever works for people. 72-hour stream, not so much. That's probably not going to be a thing just because of work. But we'll look for times for like community goals and things like that for like a 24-hour stream, that kind of stuff. So don't worry, there'll be times for that. 12-hour, 24-hour, whatever. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for being here, Cobra. And here's the raid. Go ahead and make that. And I will go ahead and Is that a space in between the B and the L? Or is that just bad kerning? Whatever. That's the raid message. I don't care. Go ahead and throw that out when we get there. But again, really grateful and thankful to y'all being here. Thanks for hanging out. You know what? Screw it. Yeah, there's a space. There. Okay. Silly. Anyway, copy that, paste it for the raid. Show some love to MK if you want. And then have a great rest of your day. Great rest of your weekend. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Depending on the time. We'll work it out.